What does the contract extension for Nik Bonitto mean for the overall trajectory of the Denver Broncos beginning with this 2025 season? And how much concern should there be at this point in time as we are just days away from the season opener for the Denver Broncos with Dre Greenlaw's health status and the overall depth of the inside linebacker room? All things to come on today's rundown, but we have to begin with the story that has dragged on for so much longer than many of us thought that it would, but it finally happened. The Denver Broncos have reached an agreement with emerging pass rusher Nik Bonitto on a 4-year contract extension worth up to $120 million, with $70 million of that guaranteed. The news came from Adam Schefter and others that the team and Nik Bonitto had come to that agreement, and it sets Nik Bonitto up to go into this game against the Tennessee Titans with clear eyes and nothing on the mind other than getting after Cam Ward and starting off his 2025 season with the same momentum that he finished 2024, where he had 13 and a half sacks and was top 3 in the NFL in that statistical category. We had pondered and questioned with Zach Allen and Courtland Sutton and Nik Bonitto which contract extension would come first, what the order of operations should be. Many people placed Nik Bonitto at the front of that list for a lot of reasonable points. The fact that he is on a rookie deal going into this season, making, I believe, less than $5 million prior to this extension as a second-round draft pick. Zach Allen and Courtland Sutton, the other two major names involved, had both been paid multiple times in their NFL career, and the importance of the edge rusher position compared to wide receiver and interior defensive lineman as a viewpoint from the entire NFL, team to team and front office to front office. But it finally gets done. $70 million guaranteed, and at 4 years, at $26.5 million a year, puts it at about $106 million in actual value, with an additional $14 million available in incentives. And I just got to say, this looks like a masterclass signing for George Payton. There were so many after the Micah Parsons deal went down where he's making almost $50 million per year after signing that extension with the Green Bay Packers post-trade, and many who thought that is going to drive the price for Nik Bonitto up. This is just another bargaining chip that Nik Bonitto and his agent, who also is the same agent that represents Patrick Surtain, would use to say, hey, now the price, the going rate is no longer $25 million. Now it's closer to 30 or maybe even 33 or 34. The numbers that were being thrown around about what Nik Bonitto could earn on the open market or even in this contract extension negotiation ballooned very quickly. And it clearly didn't impact the negotiations all that much because they get Nik Bonitto for just a tick above $25 million a year, which frankly, I think is a great deal viewed from both sides. Nik Bonitto does not have to play on a rookie deal anymore. He gets his first major contract. The total value is just over $100 million, and he has the opportunity with incentives, if he continues to build on his 13 and a half sack season, to get up to that $120 million. And when you look at the edge rusher market, the same way that we looked at the pass or the cornerback market after Patrick Surtain signed his extension, and the way it's going to continue to balloon and bubble up over the next offseason and thereafter, this locks Nik Bonitto down as an emerging pass rusher just entering his prime at a rate that is so advantageous to the Denver Broncos in the beyond 2025 perspective. And what it also signals is that the Denver Broncos feel like they are on the doorstep of a potential championship contending window. The fact that they have signed in 7 contract extensions since July of last year, and shout out to Parker Gabriel, who does a great job at the Denver Post for pointing that out. But from Nik Bonitto to Zach Allen to Courtland Sutton to Jonathan Cooper to Garrett Bowles to Quinn Miners, the list of names, DJ Jones, that happened in March of this year, the list of impact level players for this team who have proven to be valuable assets and are now locked in for the next handful of years while they continue to take advantage of Bo Nix's rookie contract, show to me that this team is operating under the vision and the words of their head coach, Sean Payton, who said he feels like this is the 7th team he's coached in the history of his NFL head coaching career that he believes can win a Super Bowl, and that Bo Nix is on the path to becoming a top 5 or better quarterback in the NFL within a reasonable frame of time in the next handful of years. And George Payton, as his right-hand man, has constructed from a front office perspective a series of contract extensions that absolutely support that vision. Does that, in your opinion, mean that maybe the Broncos are moving too fast? I think there are still plenty of people, certainly nationally and even here locally, that say, I think we need one more year out of Bo Nix to make sure that last year in 2024 wasn't a fluke and that they didn't go up against an easy schedule, as evidenced by their poor record in games decided by one score or against teams above 500. And that we could experience some potential regression with a more difficult schedule that really doesn't leave you a lot of pockets throughout the season when you have weeks 3 through 5 playing the Chargers, Bengals, and Super Bowl champion Eagles back to back to back. And then you have, after week 10 from 11 through 13 on the schedule, you've got the Cowboys, the Packers, and the Raiders with the Commanders thrown in there as well. So overall, I actually agree with George Payton and this front office's decision to operate this way, because your head coach, who you brought in there to do exactly that, if you're the Walton Penner ownership group, you brought Sean Payton here to bring this team back to Super Bowl contention and to hoist a 4th Lombardi trophy. And so by bringing him in with that vision and then not supporting him on the back end the way that George Payton has would be a disservice to the reason why you hired a veteran and proven and established and champion head coach in the first place. And I'll reiterate it again. This Nik Bonitto signing is yet another arrow in the quiver, feather in the cap, whatever, gold star on the report card, however you want to phrase it. This Nik Bonitto signing is another example of some masterclass financial and front office work from George Payton and his staff, and the way that he and Sean Payton have worked in conjunction to give the Broncos a chance to materialize the vision that Sean Payton put out into existence by saying this is a team that can win a Super Bowl, and Bo Nix is absolutely someone who can be a top 5 quarterback in this league in a reasonable amount of years. And so Nik Bonitto, before that Zach Allen, and before that Cortland Sutton, and before that DJ Jones, and before that Jonathan Cooper, and before that Garrett Bowles and Quinn Miners and Patrick Surtain. That list of contract extensions that have been handed out, hundreds of millions of dollars to lock in a reigning defensive player of the year, an all-pro level guard, an emerging pass rusher in Nik Bonitto, an incredible complementary piece in Jonathan Cooper, a standout left tackle in Garrett Bowles, an interior tank in the middle of your defensive line in Zach Allen, and DJ Jones, who's a great player in his own right that almost doesn't get mentioned, despite the fact that he was a significant player for the 49ers and now with the Broncos. This is a team that is built in the image that Sean Payton has put out there, and it bodes very well, not just for the Broncos in 2025, but for the remainder of time on Bo Nix's rookie contract, where they can continue to spend this money and hope that it pays dividends before that contract comes due for Bo Nix. Not on a lesser note, but shifting gears to the defensive side of the ball, specifically in the linebacker room, we got an update from Nik Bonitto, on Nik Bonitto from Sean Payton yesterday at the podium that, again, is just something that, while you shouldn't say is unexpected, it is kind of a somewhat troubling or potentially concerning confirmation of what could be to come across the 2025 season, starting with this Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. And that is a little bit of shaky and spotty health situations with Dre Greenlaw. Sean Payton yesterday at the podium said, quote, "At this point forward," and I appreciate the question, "at this point forward, I'm not going to talk one thing about player injuries. We will report what we're required to report, but you'll never hear me talk about how I feel it's going or any of that. Really, there's no advantage for me to discuss it." That was obviously in reference to Dre Greenlaw, who was a DNP, did not practice in yesterday's practice on a legitimate work day on a Wednesday leading into a Sunday game. And it brings the question, of whether or not the gamble that George Payton and Sean Payton, with the confidence and the backing of their health and fitness and training professional in Bo Lowry, who has done wonders for this team over the last couple of years from a health and sustainability perspective, if that gamble on Dre Greenlaw is going to pan out. Because Dre Greenlaw, when healthy, as has been mentioned up and down on this show and in this market, is one of the best inside linebackers in the National Football League when healthy. The way that the San Francisco 49ers defensive identity shifted and changed when Greenlaw popped his Achilles in that Super Bowl and how they looked with him versus how they looked without him on a great defensive front in San Francisco is evidence to the fact that Dre Greenlaw can absolutely make that impact. And now, just like the 49ers had to assess, the Broncos are now having to assess how much of an impact is he going to be able to make in 2025, and how many games can we realistically get a healthy, available, and ready to go Dre Greenlaw to be a centerpiece alongside Alex Singleton in this defense. And as of now, it remains to be seen whether or not week one will fall into that column of available games against the Tennessee Titans. Now, if there was if there was ever going to be a softer launch to have an inside linebacker and a physical presence like Dre Greenlaw not potentially be available, it would be in a week one and potentially week two setup against the Tennessee Titans and Indianapolis Colts. And it would be in the center of a defense that has a capable inside linebacker in Alex Singleton on one side and is sandwiched by a stellar interior defensive line, an emerging duo of young pass rushers, the reigning defensive player of the year, and a first-round pick, and another emerging young player in Riley Moss in the secondary. So there is a soft landing spot, in my opinion, for Dre Greenlaw to not have to be rushed back early in the season if he is not ready to do so. And I think that Bo Lowry and his staff, along with Sean Payton, have earned the benefit of the doubt thus far on how to approach and how to handle the Dre Greenlaw situation and manage that health. Because Dre Greenlaw, unfortunately, has not been able to be healthy for any significant stretch of time since becoming a Denver Bronco. There was a quad issue that popped up early in the offseason after the signing was made. There were off and on issues during training camp where he pulled up on a coverage drill, and there was questions about whether or not it was a compensation injury or something additional and on a different portion of his lower body where most of the injuries seem to be contained for right now. And so that really does lend to the speculation that this is something that can and probably will carry over into the regular season as early as week one when the Tennessee Titans come to town. I've said it before and I will say it again. The inside linebacker room for the Denver Broncos, to me, has the highest ceiling and the lowest floor of any position group on this Denver Broncos roster in 2025. The green light ahead possibility of what they can be with a healthy Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton, sandwiched by those two stellar fronts in the defensive front with the pass rushers and the interior, and then the secondary behind them, is sky high from a potential and an expectation standpoint. But if everything doesn't go the way that it does to need that to happen, the floor for this inside linebacker room with Alex Singleton, Justin Strnad, and then some banged up potential injuries to Drew Sanders, and you've got Lavelle Bailey on the practice squad and kind of this rotating cast. And Justin Strnad is a player who started 8 games or so last season and has proven to be someone who can, at least in spot duty, be capable of filling that role. But the floor and the ceiling, the distance between them in the inside linebacker room is as big or bigger than any room on this Denver Broncos squad in 2025. And because of that, the Denver Broncos need to be as patient and as mindful as possible navigating this Dre Greenlaw health situation. Because while they have a soft start to the season from a scheduling perspective with the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts, things get going in a hurry when you get the Chargers, Bengals, and Eagles right there, who all present offensive weapons and a physical style of play on offense that could give the Broncos a tougher challenge than they'll see in the first 2 weeks, and frankly, almost certainly will give them a tougher challenge. And then when you factor in the rising talent overall in the AFC West as a division, and the fact that to get through the AFC, you've got to go through the likes of some significantly potent offenses and quarterbacks with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. And then the NFC squads on their schedule, like the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, and the Packers with Jordan Love. This Broncos defense needs Dre Greenlaw for as many games as they can have him. And so if that means that he has to miss time in the first week, the second week, or at the beginning of the season in some capacity in order to remain healthy and available on the back stretch of the season and through the doldrums where injuries to other positions are inevitably going to pile up, then so be it. Because if the Denver Broncos can't have a healthy Dre Greenlaw for half of an NFL season or more where he's readily available and in a capacity to contribute, then it's going to create weak spots and deficiencies in the center of that defense that will be exploitable to the talent and opposing offenses that they're going to face in 2025. We are just, 72 hours away from the first Broncos game of the NFL season, and it really is starting to feel like football is officially back. The first game tonight, Cowboys and Eagles to kick off the NFL season. We will be locked in on that to preview some future opponents for the Denver Broncos. You've got two divisional opponents facing off in Sao Paulo, Brazil on Friday. We get Thursday, Friday, and Sunday football this week, and it is going to quickly start to snap into focus all of the projection and speculation and projection that we have done over the course of the last 3 to 4 months, really since the conclusion of the 2024 season with the Super Bowl champion Eagles. All of that is going to slowly but surely in some cases and quickly in other cases come into focus about what we can genuinely and tangibly expect in 2025 for Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos as they enter the sophomore campaign with someone who they clearly believe is their next franchise quarterback. Stay locked into Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan for all of the latest news, updates, and information on all things Broncos on this Titans game week. Head to DenverSports.com to comb through all of the written and video content available at your disposal with our Watch Center and the litany of articles written by our senior Broncos writer, Andrew Mason, who will be on the case at every Broncos game alongside our social media guru, Anilo Piro. Trent Finnegan and Will Peterson and Jake Shapiro and Cecil Lammy and James Merrilat and everybody on the digital side who is creating so much content and information for you to be able to digest as you get back into your football season routine. And then like and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all of our digital shows like The Rundown here on weekdays at noon, Denver Sports Daily in the mornings with Joey Freeberg, Orange and Blue Today, weeknights with Cecil Lammy and Andrew Mason, and just a host of other content and discussion for you to be able to interact with in a way that it maybe isn't possible on the radio or online with DenverSports.com. And that is essentially the best part about doing shows like this, is being able to have a direct-to-consumer way to interact with Broncos country and with Nuggets Nation and with Avalanche fans and with the handful of Rockies fans that are still willing and ready to bang their chests. And that doesn't even begin to bring up everything going on up at Boulder and in Fort Collins with CU and CSU. So much opportunity for engagement, for listening, for reading, and for watching. And we have it all for you at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. Nobody does football season like us here at The Fan. So keep it locked, and we'll catch you tomorrow at noon on The Rundown.
I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.